welcome to the 5th IMEC Make in India conference on renewable energy. We have hosted 4 Canada-India conferences so far on travel, tourism and hospitality. That was the first one, followed by IT and manufacturing. Infrastructure was the 3rd conference, and then healthcare and pharmaceuticals last month. Prior to today's event, of course. These bilateral conferences are supported by the High Commissioner of India in Canada, and we are thankful to His Excellency, the High Commissioner, Deputy High Commissioner, and the fantastic team at the High Commission who also broadcast these conferences live on the Facebook page of the High Commission of India, as well as a special thank you to Invest India for their help and insight into various sectors, all their sector-specific leads and vice presidents, and for Ajay for coordinating it every time. Impact Media and Events Corporation, or IMEC as we call it, is a Brampton, Ontario-based company since 2002. And we primarily do the following activities: Make in India themed sector-specific bilateral conferences, provincial and interprovincial conferences, virtual and in-person business leaders roundtables, Canada-India Education Forum with Canadian colleges and universities, an annual gala event recognizing prominent Indo-Canadians and Friends of India, and other activities on the Canada-India corridor. On May 29, we are hosting a major India at 75 gala in Woodbridge, Ontario, where we will be recognizing 275 prominent business and political leaders from all across Canada. On August 28th, we will celebrate India at 75 again with an India at 75 food festival. And on October 16, we'll be hosting an India at 75 dance festival. All our activities, past, present, and future, can be seen at our website, imec.biz. And all event videos are also available on the IMEC YouTube channel, as well as on IMEC social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Let me thank the annual IMEC sponsors, without whose support none of this would be possible. So Nagasat, if you can pull up that slide quickly. Please meet our 2 presenting sponsors for 2022, Tangentia and Yukon. And our other annual partners are Simply Financial, Skylink, Capital Corp, Seneca College, Efficience Canada, SBI Canada Bank, Home Hotel and Resort, ICICI Bank Canada, Natu Oil Services, One Place, Pavi Bining, and Akal Insurance. So before we invite the High Commissioner for his welcome remarks, let me briefly bring in our presenting sponsor for 2022, Vijay Thomas from Tangentia. Vijay has been a very, very active player, I would say, if I can call it that, on the Canada-India corridor with active operations in Canada, India, and US. A past president of an Indo-Canadian business body, and with several diverse business interests in both Canada and India. So Vijay, brief remarks from you, and then we'll go to the High Commissioner for his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Vipul Bhai. And you know, I thought I was coming from Canada and the cold to India, and I was just joking a little before this. It is quite hot here. I am in Goa right now. This is our office here in Goa. You know, so it is the grass is green on the other side. It is quite hot. So you know, it is the doing business in both these countries is fantastic. There's some of the downsides, but I think we have all figured out how to do business. And I think it's great. And not just we have figured it out. I think Vipul Bhai, you have figured it out. I think from very humble beginnings, you know, 2 years back, IMEC has come a long way. So congratulations to you. And it's been our honor and pleasure to help in whatever little way possible. So I'd like to congratulate you and today's event. I think it couldn't have been at a better time with the crisis happening in Russia and Ukraine and the oil crisis. What better time to have a renewable energy thing? So fantastic. And I see a great panel. So I'll make my way out of here. And thank you very much for the opportunity. And, we will continue to like to be engaged. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Vijay. So, Naga sir, let us bring this slide to introduce the High Commissioner, please. Okay, so His Excellency Ajay Bisaria is the High Commissioner of India to Canada from March 1st, 2020. Previously, he was India's ambassador to Poland with concurrent accreditation to Lithuania and also served as the High Commissioner of India to Pakistan. Earlier, Mr. Bisaria was posted at the Indian Embassy in Moscow and served as Undersecretary in the Ministry of External Affairs on the East Europe desk, and then moved to the Ministry of Commerce in the era of economic liberalization. He was posted as First Secretary in the Indian Embassy in Berlin and later appointed as a Private Secretary to Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Bisaria was posted to the World Bank in Washington, D.C. as advisor to the Executive Director for South Asia. In 2009, he moved to Delhi to serve as Joint Secretary, Eurasia in the Ministry of External Affairs. The High Commissioner is fluent in Hindi, English, and Russian, and has working knowledge of German, Polish, and Urdu. So welcome, sir. Looking forward to your welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Vipul. Namaskar. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Let me begin by greeting the co-panelists and all the panelists today. Thank you, Vipul for all that you're doing with so much tenacity and consistency in promoting the India-Canada relationship, the economic relationship. Greetings to Vijay Thomas in Goa. If it's any consolation, it's -10 degrees in Ottawa. So you are at the right place at the right time. I want to greet Honorable Ranj Pillai, my friend. I believe he'll join later. I don't see him on the screen. And of course, my colleague from Invest India, Amit Manohar. And it's great to see so many panelists from industry just representing the vibrancy of this sector. We're talking about Alectra, Solar Alberta, Energy Storage Canada, Adani Solar, all friends joining us. Welcome to this event. Great to be here. I think, as Vijay said, this is a great time to be talking about renewable energy, not just because of what's happening geopolitically, but also because this really represents the future in terms of what we discuss as ambitions of countries in the next decade. For India and Canada, if we start with the big picture, we have a strong policy convergence on climate action. Both countries believe in strong and positive climate action. India has set a net zero target, as you know, for 2070. And given the complementary strengths and opportunities in the sector, we see tremendous scope for collaboration. So in terms of the larger picture, we are at a sweet spot in the India-Canada economic partnership. India and Canada we see as natural partners, and with a strategic partnership which we declared since 2015, which is itself based on shared values of democracy, pluralism, liberal and rules-based global order, and of course, excellent people-to-people ties, which give a great deal of fillip to our economic engagement. And of late, we have seen that the economic relationship is driving this strategic partnership. So if you look at the India-Canada trade corridor, we had an excellent year, despite it being a pandemic year in 2021, with about $16 billion Canadian dollars of trade, 9 in goods, and about $7 billion in services. And we also had a great deal of investment, which is going on bilaterally. So Canada, according to the statistics, is the 21st largest foreign investor in India, with an investment of close to $3 billion. But more important than the FDI is the story of institutional investment, which has gone up from $5 billion to more than $65 billion today. Canada is one of the largest institutional investors and portfolio investors in India. And conversely, our new study by CIA is showing that India is a major investor in Canada. Canada, of course, has about 1,000 companies active in India, but India has more than 100 companies active, investing more than $7 billion in the Canadian economy in diverse sectors. So overall, we count an economic exchange which is more than $100 billion. And as India grows to a $5 trillion and a $10 trillion economy by the end of the decade, we expect this engagement to double and quadruple. Recently, we had the visit to India of Minister Mary, Minister of Trade of Canada. And what we agreed on is an early progress trade agreement that we would start negotiating. We hope to complete that within a year, which becomes a stepping stone to a more comprehensive economic partnership agreement. But that will have all the concomitant benefits for multiple sectors, including for renewable energy. We also have conversations going on a FIPA, an investment promotion agreement. So the investment, trade, economic linkages are going on at a very healthy pace, but we are determined to produce that legal framework and infrastructure to make it even stronger. So I think the future of the India-Canada economic partnership is an area that we are talking about today. It's going to be a green future. It's going to be a technology-driven future. If we look at the opportunities for India's growing renewable energy sector, and this I'm sure is something that we'll hear much more of as we go along, but let me just talk of the few broad numbers that stick out. India, as you know, has an ambitious target of achieving 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by this year and 450 gigawatts by 2030, and about 280 gigawatts, that is over 60%, is expected from the solar sector. And we are, of course, in the middle of the world's largest renewable energy capacity expansion plan. And this has led to India being ranked third in Ernst & Young's Renewable Energy Country Attractiveness Index for 2021. We also have a very active Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and that has set up very ambitious targets for renewable energy capacities to the tune of 227 gigawatts by 2022, of which 114 gigawatts is planned for solar, 67 gigawatts for wind, and others for hydro and bio, among others. So I think I'm going to leave out the numbers here, but what we have and we'll hear more of is a huge thrust in which the government is a strong participant. Looking at the investment opportunities, there is a huge thrust, as you know, in India in the infrastructure sector in general. And we have an infrastructure investment pipeline of $1.4 trillion that is currently available and is the current ambition. But more than that, if you look at the plans till 2040, we have a plan of envisaged investment of $4.5 trillion. So the future definitely is going to belong to infrastructure. And within that, India's renewable energy sector is expected to attract investment of more than $80 billion in the next 4 years, and about 5,000 compressed biogas plants, for instance, will be set up in India across in 2023. Also, in terms of policy opening, 100% FDI is allowed in India's renewable energy sector. And in 2019-20, the key investment deals in the renewable energy generation totaled about $8 billion, with 41% of them targeting the solar sector and 10% to wind. So there's a great deal of buzz and activity already in this sector. The FDI inflow numbers in the Indian non-conventional energy sector stood at more than $10 billion between April 2000 and June 2021. And more than $42 billion has been invested in India's renewable energy sector since 2014. And so this new investment in clean energy has reached more than $11 billion. And this, I think all these numbers, which I'm throwing at you, are demonstrating that this is a sector that is already very vibrant and the future plans and prospects are very strong. In terms of the incentives that the government has given to its own MNRE in India, we've increased the use of clean energy sources, and already the government is undertaking large-scale sustainable power projects and promoting green energy heavily. In addition, renewable energy has the potential to create huge employment opportunities, which is another incentive to get into this sector in a big way. And to boost the manufacturing capacity and to enhance it for production of high efficiency photovoltaic solar modules, the government introduced a very attractive production-linked incentive package for industry, which I believe has been deeply appreciated. What the government also wants to do is to develop a green city in every state in the country powered by renewable energy. And the green city will mainstream environment-friendly power through solar rooftop systems on all its houses, solar parks and the city's outskirts, waste-to-energy plants, and electric mobility enabled public transport systems. So all these schemes are backed with a lot of budgetary provisions, including in last year's budget. And there are several innovative segments such as floating solar power projects and new wind solar hybrid national policy, a national hydrogen mission, and all of which create huge opportunities. We've been discussing each of these segments with our Canadian partners, and each of these create opportunities for both for technology exchange and investment. So I'm sure our conversation today, taking Invest India's big picture painting and then going on to an industry conversation, is going to identify very specific opportunities in the renewable sector in India. Let me just close by mentioning two things. One is that already there is a great deal of investment coming from the institutional investors, the pension funds, and the investment firms like Brookfield and Fairfax, guided by and driven by their own ESG policies. For them, renewable energy becomes a strong priority. In my conversations with the CEOs of these pension funds, they often emphatically state that their investments going forward in India will be in the greener sectors. And since we're expecting a great deal of investment, I think that is something to note. The other is that we are exploring with the Canadian government a green strategic partnership. We are talking of this as a defining paradigm of our relationship over the next decade. And again, this is something where we will look for ideas to come from industry and from the renewable energy sector on what we can take forward. So let me stop there, and thank you very much for listening, and look forward to some very concrete ideas coming out of this session. Thank you.
Thank you for the remarks, Ajay ji. So I have got two quick questions for you before we move to Amit Manohar from Invest India. The first is India's energy needs are very high, and a very high percentage of it is imported from abroad. External factors and geopolitical issues can cause major challenges, particularly for India. To what extent can renewable energy offset that risk? And what are India's options going forward as our traditional energy sources like Iran, Russia, etc., are all becoming more difficult to access? And what role can Canada play to offset that? It's like multiple questions into one.
Well, Vipul, I think we've addressed many of these questions in what I said. But, just to crystallize it, certainly led both by geopolitical factors, the fact that India's energy dependence on external energy providers, and for the need to go green for climate action reasons. I think for all these reasons, renewable energy will be critical and important. And key questions for us going forward will be the cost of this energy and the storage of this energy, which would make it a viable alternative. You've already seen the geopolitical posture that India has declared an Atmanirbhar Bharat. We want to be self-reliant and have critical supply chains originating in India, manufacturing to move to India. And then there are multiple initiatives like the green hydrogen mission and so on, which are futuristic. So I think we will be looking for the concrete ideas from sessions such as this one, but the government's policy orientation is certainly very strongly towards moving to renewables.
Okay. The second question is, a growing economy with 1.3 billion people. It is obvious that India's reliance on fossil fuel is here to stay for at least a few more decades to come. While India is taking important and ambitious steps in moving towards a cleaner and greener economy, is a major switch possible or achievable in the near future?
Well, we certainly hope so. And I think this is a subject of a very important debate that we keep having in policy circles, which is of the energy transition. And certainly in the transition over the next decade or two, fossil fuels, even if we move to 50% green fuels, fossil fuels will continue to be important. So I think the challenge there is to work with partners like Canada and look for clean technologies to harness the fossil fuels as well as continuing with renewables. So I think both strategies would have to go in parallel to make for an intelligent and smart energy strategy for India.
Thank you for those remarks and answers, High Commissioner Bisaria ji. We'll continue to bring the major stakeholders, I would say, from both countries together, even after this conference also, through our in-person roundtables that will follow soon, and we'll invite all the speakers, at least in Canada, to come and join us for the in-person roundtable. So let us now move to our next speaker, Amit Manohar from Invest India. Nagasrat, if you can pull up the slide for him. Amit Manohar is a senior manager and a sector lead for energy for Invest India. He specializes in providing country and state-specific inputs and hand-holding support to foreign investors through the entire investment cycle. Currently, he heads the renewable energy sector at Invest India. He has a decade of experience in consulting, banking, and manufacturing sectors. Prior to this, he had a startup in the manufacturing sector. Amit has completed his MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Karachi, and is an engineer, electronics and communication. So about Invest India, Invest India is the national investment promotion and facilitation agency set up under the aegis of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Invest India focuses on sector-specific investor targeting and development of new partnerships to enable sustainable investments in India. Invest India also actively works with several Indian states to build capacity as well as bring in global best practices in investment targeting, promotion, and facilitation areas. Invest India was set up in 2009 as a non-profit venture. So over to you, Amit.
Thank you, Vipulji, for the introduction. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your great insights on the India-Canada partnerships and your insights on the renewable energy sector. I don't have much more to add to that, but still I'll try my best to add to what Sir has already shared before. So let me share my screen. So starting now, I mean, I would say the Indian century has begun. We are the fastest growing economy in the globe right now. A few years back, the question was like, how will India rise up to the green energy challenge? Now the narrative has changed. It's most likely the question right now people ask is, how will India lead the transition? And that's where we see that India will shape the new normal in the energy transition. We are the world's third largest electricity consumer and generator. We are the fourth largest solar. We have the fourth largest solar installed capacity, fifth largest wind energy capacity. Now that's why we see this is a green energy revolution for India. In the last decade or so, we have shifted with a great space. Now let me take you through the government commitments at COP26 summit last November. Now, this was the summit where India actually had a goal in place. I mean, now we have a goal by 2070, we'll have a net zero emissions. Those are the long-term goals. Now, when you talk about the short-term goals, we have also set up two goals for 2030, which is like we'll reduce 1 billion tons of carbon emissions by 2030. And we'll have 50% of non-fossil fuels in energy mix by 2030. Now this is where renewable energy sector comes into place. I mean, right now, as of now, we have actually exceeded the COP21 summit in Paris, where we had said that we'll have 40% of renewable energy mix in the total mix. Right now, we have achieved those. And this year we'll also achieve 175 gigawatts. Our goal is to reach 500 gigawatts by 2030. Now, as of January 2022, this is where our renewable energy installation capacity is. We have about 50 gigawatts in hydro, 50 gigawatts in solar, 40 gigawatts in wind, and about 10 gigawatts in biopower, and about 7 gigawatts in the nuclear energy sector. Now, there are some initiatives that the Government of India has taken for the development of renewable energy sector. We have allowed FDI up to 100%. As His Excellency already shared, we have received about 10 billion in this sector in the last decade. We have developed a green energy corridor project for evacuation of renewable energy in India. We have also introduced RECs and RPOs in India. These are renewable energy certificates and purchase obligation for renewable energy producers in India. We have also waived off interstate transmission charges. I mean, this is where most of the players wanted this, global players wanted this rule to be changed, and Government of India has changed that rule also. Government has also assured offtake of renewable energy purchasing agreements in India. So these were the main pain points for global investors in the sector, and which government has actively resolved in last few years. As was envisioned by our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi in Davos Summit this year, India's growth in the next 25 years will be clean, green, sustainable, and reliable. And that's where our focus is. Now, government has taken certain measures to enable renewable energy sector. I mean, our main plank right now where we focus is Make in India. Make in India was an initiative launched by government in 2014 to enable manufacturing sector in India. Make in India rests on 4 major planks. Now, for the renewable energy sector, when we look at it from the perspective of renewable energy sector, what we have done is we have introduced policies to enable renewable energy manufacturing in India. 2 major policies are production-linked incentives. We have incentives for advanced chemistry cell and solar PV modules. We have also introduced manufacturing-linked tenders for manufacturers in India. The second plank is the new age policies and how you can, leverage them. I mean, we have introduced national wind solar hybrid policy. We have a national hydrogen mission policy. One of the version has been launched last month, and we are awaiting the next version to be launched in a few months. We also have a very good offshore wind farming policy to attract global investors in the sector. Now, we are, as His Excellency already shared, that we are seeing a lot of focus on the infrastructure in the next few years. We have developed a green corridor project for our renewable energy sector. We have specially earmarked capital infusion for this renewable energy projects in India. We have also focused on the development of smart cities. Now, to help our manufacturers in India, we have actually reduced import dependency for the manufacturers. We have imposed certain custom duties on the solar cells and modules to help the manufacturers to set up their units in India. We have also have an approved list of modules manufacturers in India. I mean, these are the players who will be given preferences for their projects of take in India. And a certain amount of PLI would focus on the domestic content requirement. I'll talk about the PLI in the next slide. When you combine all these 4 pillars, we have a long-term technology development goal in our focus, and we also would like to have a good capacity building for the sector. Now, when we talk about the manufacturing sector in India, we are looking at about 14 major sectors. I mean, I'll cover the high efficiency solar PV module sector right now over here. This is where government has notified about 3.2 billion will go into as an incentive to the manufacturers. We expect about 12 to 15 billion of investments in this particular sector as a result of this scheme. Now, one round of scheme has already been completed, which was about 600 million was earmarked for high efficiency solar PV modules and cells. Now, the second round is under progress, and I invite all the Canadian players and investors to participate in the second round of solar PV PLI scheme. I mean, we will be more than happy to help you and handhold in the process. Do write us a mail on your requirements. We'll connect you with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and facilitate your journey in India. Now, I'll talk about the India opportunity for the sectors. Now, when we talk about solar, we have a target to install 280 gigawatts by 2030. We have solar parks mandated for most of the states in India, of about 50 solar parks envisioned for India, out of which 45 have already been developed with a capacity of 37 gigawatts. On the right, you can see the various states where we have seen the solar parks where they're established. I mean, as you can see, most of them are already established, and some of them are actually ripe for investments. I mean, we expect investors to go and set up their solar parks over there. Now, there's a total demand of about 30 gigawatts of solar cell and modules annually, out of which we are manufacturing only about 5 gigawatts in India. That's a big gap that we would want manufacturers to set up their units in India and leverage that opportunity. India's total electricity demand by 2030 is expected to be 30% driven by the solar sector, and that's one major focus area for government going ahead. We have discussed about the production linked scheme, about where government has given $3.2 billion US as an incentive. We have one dedicated government financing agency for the sector, which we call Solar Energy Corporation of India. This is where the government has taken a step where we see that the banks, I mean, the traditional banks are not able to understand this sector. That's why this financing agency was envisioned by the government last few years. The key investors in the sectors are Renew Power, Azure Power, Acme, Tata Power, Adani, First Solar, and Vari. I mean, these are the key investors in the sectors, and they are one of the few champion players in the sector. Going ahead, we'll talk about the wind sector in India. What we envision is a 140 gigawatts projected capacity by 2030. As you can see on the right, we have the western coast of India, where we see the most of the wind capacity is there. I mean, wind generation capacity is there. As you can see, the Rajasthan has 4.3 gigawatts of capacity, Gujarat 8.7 gigawatts, Maharashtra 5 gigawatts, Karnataka about 5 gigawatts. So this is a basic picture of India, where we see that the investors can evaluate various states where they can invest in India. About 17% of India's total electricity demand by 2030 will come from the wind sector. Right now, wind sector contributes about 40 gigawatts, going up to 140 gigawatts by 2030. This is one major area for investors. We have a 10 gigawatts annual manufacturing capacity, where some of the world's biggest wind manufacturers have set up their base in India. And we have the lowest cost of manufacturing per megawatt of wind turbine in the world, which is about $0.9 million. This is one of the major planks for manufacturing in India. We have two policies focusing on the wind sector in India: National Wind Solar Hybrid Policy and Offshore Wind Energy Policies. These are new age policies focusing on wind sector per se. As discussed earlier, we have a dedicated government agency for the sector, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency. I mean, this focuses on projects related to wind and solar that I've discussed earlier. I mean, these are one of the key initiatives of government to actually facilitate investors who find capital as a roadblock for their investments in India. The key investors in the sector are Suzlon, Vestas, Siemens Gamesa, Inox, and Nordex. We are actively in touch with Vestas, Siemens, and Suzlon in India, and we are actively facilitating their investments in India. Vestas has been in particular a key investor in India in this sector, and their success story has been a what you call benchmark for us at Invest India, where we saw that this was one of the investments where we facilitated them in the shortest amount of time. I mean, it could be a global, I would say, benchmark for investments. Now, when we talk about green hydrogen, the green hydrogen is a very futuristic technology. I mean, not much of it has been commercialized globally, but it's a focus area for most of the nations right now, because this will focus on the hard to abate greenhouse gas emissions when we talk about sectors like steel, refinery, and fertilizers. India has a projected capacity of about 1.5 gigawatts by 2030. We'll have a very humble beginning, but we'll also have, but what we see as a sectoral thing, that this will almost reach about 5 million tons of hydrogen production by 2030. These are our short-term goals. On the right, you can see the industrial clusters where hydrogen offtake will be initially happening. I mean, these are the hard to abate industries where we see that this is where most of our greenhouse gas emissions happen during their production. These are refineries for petrochemicals, fertilizer sector, when we talk about ammonia production, iron and steel, where they use blast furnace and direct reduction method. Now, this is where hydrogen will actually help us in carbon emissions. Now, 80% of India's hydrogen is projected to be green by 2050. There are many versions of hydrogen globally, gray, brown, but India is expected to have about 80% of hydrogen green. We are expecting an investment of about 50 billion by 2050. These are our long-term goals and will help India to reach its net zero emission goal by 2070. We have a hydrogen policy. I mean, it will be launched in a month or so. The basic contours were launched last month. I mean, this gives us a way ahead for the development of the sector and how global investors can leverage the policy to make their investments in India. Once again, we have an Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency as a government financing agency for the sector, hydrogen being a very new sector for investors as well as for startups in India. We see a lot of traction, a lot of investments coming to sector, and I'm sure IREDA will help them facilitate their investments in India. Some of the key investors in the sector, this is where government has taken the lead. Companies such as National Thermal Power Corporation, Indian Oil Corporation, and Gas Authority of India Limited have taken the first step towards hydrogen production and commissioning projects in India. We also have private players, Jindal Steel, Tata Motors, and Adani, who have taken good amount of steps to have green hydrogen in the production supply chain.
2 minutes.
Yeah, talking about how we see this sector going ahead, I mean, as was described by His Excellency earlier, we have seen a lot of institutional investors investing in this sector. We have seen about 14 billion coming into this sector. And government has taken given them a good amount of incentives to boost investments. They have given them 100% tax exemptions. On the right, you can see the various investors in the sector. I mean, we have seen about 40 billion coming from Canadian institutional investors in the sector. Some of them are CPP, Brookfield, and as you can see, they have partnered with the leading companies in India as Greenco, Renew, Azure, and Hero Future Energies. A brief about Invest India. We are at the central point for investors to connect to government as well as industry. We help investors in opportunity assessment, location search, market strategy, regulatory clearances, issue redressal, and we also help them in continuous engagements with the government once their project has been established in India. As of now, Invest India is the president of World Association of Investment Promotion Agency for the next 2 years. And this is where we see ourselves helping you global investors on a global platform. Thank you. You can connect us at energy@investindia.org.in with your queries. I mean, we are there to help you for your journey in India.
Thank you, Amit, for the insightful presentation. So again, as I mentioned, I will have a couple of questions for you before we move to our next speaker, Neetika Sathe from Alectra. So the first question for you is for Amit. Is India currently, as we heard earlier, India currently has 151 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity with a target to expand it to 500 gigawatts by 2030. What kind of private investment will it require to take it to that level? And what are the benefits and the gestation period for private investors to see positive returns on their investments?
That's a good question, Vipulji. I mean, on a very conservative numbers, we expect investments of about 80 to 100 billion each year in the sector to achieve our 2030 targets. Now, the gestation period, these are long-term projects. I mean, some of the projects, our PPAs, purchase agreements are about 25-year in nature. So we expect the positive returns to come, let's say, in by 10th or 15th year, but these are long-term projects, and IRR is about 15%. So that's where, global investors are coming to India. But globally, the returns are about 6 to 10%, but in India, you get returns of about 15% from 10-year onwards. So that's where we see a lot of attraction for global players to enter into the renewable energy sector in India.
Okay. And the second question is, Prime Minister Modi, along with then President of France, François Hollande, established an international solar alliance in 2015 to mobilize 1,000 billion US dollars of investments by 2030. Over 120 countries are participating in this initiative, if I am not wrong. Can you tell us a bit more about where we are in that effort today in terms of the international alliance? And does it have any impact for India under its Make in India initiative for this sector?
So where we see right now is that we are actually giving a good amount of, I would say, focus onto the particular sector. We have a national infrastructure pipeline where we have about 1.4 trillion focus towards infrastructure, out of which about 20% is given to the energy sector, which is about 700 billion. On a global platform also, we are reaching out to most of the major investors, whether they are private equity investors or VCs or institutional investors. So that has been a major plank of government to reach out to most of the global players to invest in India, because going ahead, India and Asia would be at the center of energy, I would say, green energy transition. And that's where the focus of the world would be. Asia would be home to about 2.5 billion people by 2050. India would single-handedly have about 1.3 to 1.5 billion people by 2050. And I'm assuming that most of the greenhouse emissions that we are seeing, I mean, would have been abated by then. And India, whatever happens in India would be major focus of the globe right there. So that's where the focus of the ISA is also, and we are seeing a good amount of traction in that space.
Okay, thank you for the.
Vipul, if I may just come in to add to your question on ISA, this has been a very important global multilateral initiative from India. And we have also invited Canada to join it, which Canada is actively considering. As you know, initially the ISA was conceived as something where we involved countries between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn in terms of availability of solar availability. But now we've expanded the outreach, and Canada has been invited. Canada, incidentally, has already joined the CDRI, which is another global initiative by India, which is the Coalition for Disaster Relief Infrastructure, which is again another multilateral body. So I think all of us here and in this, people working in this space need to be lobbying, advocating for more countries to join in, because after all, at the ISA, there will be also such issues discussed as the technologies and the costs of solar power. So I think that is just to add that we are very active even at the government level in the India-Canada corridor in promoting solar energy.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that, sir. Okay, so let us move to our next speaker, Neetika Sathe. Naga, if you can bring up her introduction, and our Director of Operations, Tejas Ivalli, will introduce Neetika.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. Before I do the introduction, I just wanted to point out the High Commissioner's tie and pocket square. I appreciate the green color in keeping our theme of renewable energy. But now, coming to our next speaker, Neetika Sathe. Neetika is the Vice President, Green Energy and Technology Center of Alectra. Neetika is an established thought leader in areas of clean technology, sustainability, and energy transition. Under her leadership, the GRE and T Center has launched many innovative initiatives, such as a blockchain-based platform that enables the exchange of clean energy between consumers and the grid, North America's first distribution-level local electricity market in collaboration with independent electricity system operator, and a successful electricity pricing plot that laid the foundation for a new ultra-low electricity rate for EV drivers, which will become available in Ontario in 2023. Previously, Neetika was the Chief Marketing Manager for Nissan Leaf and crossovers in Canada, responsible for sales and profitability for her portfolio, including the launch of the all-electric, zero-emissions Nissan Leaf in Canada. In 2022, Neetika received Canada's Clean 50 Individual Award in the category of Traditional Energy and Generation. Previously, she was presented with the Champion Award by Energy Storage North America for her leadership in advancing energy storage technology. Neetika serves on the board of several industry associations, such as Electric Mobility Canada, Windfall Ecology Center, and National Electricity Roundtable, and has served as the chair on the board of NSERC Energy Storage Technology Network. She holds a master's degree in physics from Punjab University and an MBA from McMaster University. Neetika ji, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tejas. I really am super excited to be here today to talk on this very relevant and highly relevant and topical topic of energy transition. The aspiration to move over to that end state where all of the world's energy is clean, green, and sustainable requires a huge amount of effort in ensuring that the existing grids are modernized, in ensuring that we make the right steps in energy transition. So I wanted to share the perspective, my perspective, and the perspective coming out of my years of experience launching an electric vehicle and working for a utility. So I'm going to try to bring up my screen. So let's give this a try. Okay, it is not quite letting me.
Okay, Nageswaran, can you enable multi-screen sharing?
Sorry?
So I'll just get Nagasar to help out on this.
Yeah.
I'm just talking to our team.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, he's just discussing with our team how to help you.
In the meantime, I mean, if I can't bring up my slides, that's fine too. We can just have a conversation. So before I get into the meat of what I want to share with you, I just wanted to give you an idea of what Alectra is. We are the second largest municipally owned local energy distribution system in North America. We serve over 1 million customers around the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And within Alectra, I head the Green Energy and Technology Center, the GREAT Center. GREAT Center is Alectra's ground zero for innovation. Our mandate is summed up in our purpose statement, where great minds collaborate to power a better tomorrow, is extremely relevant in the conversation that we are having today, because not one single piece of the ecosystem can solve this problem in isolation. There is a deliberate need for a heightened collaboration across communities, across the globe, and which is why being here, having a discussion with the Indian counterparts is so exciting for me. So I am unavailable to put I think I have a technical problem at my end. I'm going to give it one more try. If that works, great. Otherwise, we will just have a conversation.
Sure.
This is why.
A transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy is never easy.
Okay, so let me just talk to you about it. We don't need slides for my message. What we are facing across the globe, it's happening in India, it's happening in Canada, it's happening at all levels, is that we are getting disrupted within the energy sector with the 4 Ds. The first D is decarbonization, and Ajay talked about the need to move over to renewables. There is a global phenomenon of aspiring to combat climate change, and it has picked up momentum in our own stomping grounds in Ontario. We are decommissioning the nuclear plant at Pickering, and that is going to result in Ontario's GHG from energy generation. It'll pick up by mid-2020s. There is a huge pushback from Ontario municipalities to stop going towards natural gas. And there is a huge push to look for clean alternatives such as clean generation, storage, and clean transportation. When I was listening to you, Amit, I applaud India for all the policies and initiatives that are in place. The one thing that I did not hear you talk about is storage. So I just wanted to point that out, that within Ontario setting, we have a heightened understanding that you cannot bring in intermittent renewables without having the grid set up to have a buffer, to have an inventory of those electrons and have storage in place. I mean, you've learned from Hawaii, we've learned from California, the sun and the wind are not going to blow exactly when we need those electrons. So it's opportunistic at the best, it's intermittent at the best, and it's our job to find out how we can grab those electrons, save them for a later point in time when we need those electrons. I mean, if you talk to Tata Power, they will tell you that they peak at night. In the Delhi area, in metropolitan areas, India's peak is at night. Now, if you bring in electric vehicles, you're going to be further peaking at night because the demand at night is going to go through the roof. How do you manage that? And we do want to bring in renewables. So with the aspiration of bringing in renewables, you also need to think about how you time the electrons such that the electrons can be available when they are most needed. And we do a lot of work within Alectra to try to manage the demand and the supply equation. So net zeros are big in Ontario and Canada, just as they are in the US, in India. The second D is digitalization. The fourth industrial revolution is characterized by the confluence of digital, biological, and physical worlds. And there is a growing utilization of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, distributed energy resources, data analytics, robotics, and electric and autonomous vehicles coming up. So these emerging technologies bring with them huge challenges as well as huge opportunities to green the energy sector. That's what is going to help us with the energy transition. So ensuring that there is enough policies and initiatives in place to further the energy tech that goes with energy transition. The third D I want to talk about is decentralization. By 2040, more than half the cars sold global will be electric. And electric cars are nothing really more for one perspective is EVs are a mobile storage unit. I just talked about the importance of storage. And now when more than half of the cars being sold globally are going to be a storage unit by themselves. So there's huge opportunity in harnessing the value of these decentralized resources and making sure you have a way to tie them into the grid so that they can be like a shared resource. It's not a new concept. We all go on vacation and stay in Airbnbs. We all get into a Lyft or an Uber. Nobody bought that Uber car for business. It's essentially a resource bought for personal use. The house that you Airbnb is essentially an asset used for your personal use, but you've decided to open it up to make a little bit extra monetization on the side. Why should that be any different in the energy sector? So when you have these decentralized, these distributed energy resources at the grid edge, I could have solar on my house. I could have a battery storage in my garage. I could have an electric vehicle. I could have a small fuel pump in my home. And if there is a way to create a local energy network so that we can harness the value from these grid edge technologies, we can then strengthen our grid and we can add more renewables on the grid. So think about grid modernization. Think about how we can strengthen the backbone in a way that a shared economy concept can emerge. The last, but not the least, disruption that I want to talk about is really democratization. Large customers like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft are doing their part in combating climate change. This is sticking like never before. No longer is it greenwashing. Google is actually acutely aware of its carbon footprint. In April 2020, they announced a new computing platform that actually shifts their computing tasks to a time when low carbon sources are plentiful. So in other words, they are moving their demand to match clean supply. So it has to be done both ways. Demand and supply of clean energy have to be pushed and pulled so that we get a good match. Amazon has announced its first renewable energy investment in Calgary. I see Mackenzie is here from Alberta Solar, and I'm sure we'll have more information about it. It's an 80 megawatt solar project, 195 gigawatt hours. That's enough energy to power 18,000 Canadian homes over a year. So it's not long before these kind of initiatives are going to get proliferated across all customers. And that's the democratization part of it, where each of us in our own individual capacity want this, need it, and will ask for it. So how does Alectra respond to these changing times and this change in, and how do we react and respond to the need for an energy transition? So within the Great Center, we have been working on clean, sustainable, and customer-friendly energy solutions. The one that I'd like to speak to you a little bit today is our project called Grid Exchange. It's a blockchain-enabled platform. You can access it through the app. I would have explained it better if I had my slides in front of me. So you will have to imagine it with me. So imagine on your phone, you have an app for grid exchange. Imagine you're driving electric car. Imagine you've got solar on your roof and you've got a battery storage in your garage or your basement or somewhere in your house. So are you all with me? That's the scenario we're imagining, right? Now at 5 o'clock, you drive back home, you put your car on charge, you got to go to work the next day. You've got a few hours. You really don't care when your car charges, as long as it's fully charged for the next morning. And on your app, you get a notification of an event where your utility is telling you, the system's really stressed out. Can you participate in this event? We will pull down your electric vehicle charging. We're going to curtail your load. Instead of charging in 2 hours, now you will fully charge in 4 hours, but I'm going to give you some money for it. And I'm going to give you some loyalty points for it, grid exchange, reward points for it. And you, at the click of the button on your app, can say yes or no. Now, if you say yes, you have now participated in a real-time demand response event without even understanding all the heavy-duty technology that's happening in the background. It's a really simple, easy to read, very simple online app that you participate. You may say, no, I have to take my son for a hockey game and I need my car charged over the next half an hour. So no, I will not participate. Now think of hundreds of thousands of such EV drivers in various neighborhoods that we have access to. We can reach out to you by way of this platform and we can engage you in real time, pushing and pulling of demand so that we are able to supply you clean energy. So that if there is high GHG on the bulk electricity system, we can nudge and coax and ask our customers to change their behavior so that they can push whatever they are able to push, like Google is pushing out its batch processing, its computing, to times when the electricity is green again. And as a result, we give you the utility gives you some financial reward, incentive for it. So end of the day, it's a way to incentivize the customer to change his or her behavior in a way that is good for the society, it's good for the planet, it's good for the grid, and it's good for their pocket. So again, it's a shared economy concept. Let's share and care and manage this energy transition to clean technologies and clean renewable together. It's not just a responsibility of the state. It's not just the responsibility of Government of India. It's not just a responsibility of Government of Canada. It is a responsibility of each and every citizen on the globe to change their habits, to change their behavior, to empower this giant switch from fossil fuel to clean energy. And the best part about our platform that we're developing is it's on blockchain, which means each and every step is auditable. It is recorded on chain, and settlements can happen real time. We can push out a demand response. We can push out a notification real time. Our engagement with the customer, it can be very trusted and very transparent. So with this, I'm running out of time. So I am going to leave it at this, and I am open to questions.
Thank you, Neetika. See, when you have technology, knowledge, and passion all together, that's what you see, Neetika, for you. All right, so thank you for a very passionate, observations. So 2 questions for you as well. The first is, you have done a lot of work on electric vehicles. And while an electric car, I mean, everybody agrees that it may be good for the environment. However, there are a few questions, that come to mind. One is, we still have issues with the range. How many kilometers can you drive with a full charge? Second is lack of charging stations, especially outside of the metro areas. And the third is, how clean is the battery production itself, right from the mining to the actual production stage?
So very good questions, Vipul. I will let you know when we've done a lot of market research on the customer. Remember, I talked about democratization as a big disruption. So we are seeing that customers are slowly changing their needs and wants and want to move over to clean renewable energy choices. As part of it, when we look at their transition to clean transportation towards EVs, the number one barrier is awareness. I remember when I launched the Leaf, Vipul, I had people come to me and ask me at trade shows and ride and drive, test drive events. They would ask me, can I take this electric car into a car wash or will I get electrocuted? So honestly, we've been taught all our life, especially in India, where we have a 220 volt versus here we have 110. Here a little kid puts a finger in the socket, it's just a little bit of a buzz. In India, when we used to put our finger in a socket, it really, really hurt. So we were taught never to mix water with electricity. And now we have asking people to drive electric. There is a huge, huge lack of awareness that, but we learned from our survey that as people become aware, they are loving the experience of driving electric. So the questions that you asked, range anxiety, do you know that something like 70% of Canadians drive under 60 kilometers a day? We tend to think that we are more mobile than our needs are. And the current electric vehicles that are in the market have a pretty good range. I've been driving electric for the past 10, 11 years. I have not once got stuck. I have actually got stuck in a gasoline car without gas, but I have never got stuck in an electric car without electrons. So it's very much, there are enough choices in the market today to make the choice based on your driving habits. But we also need to analyze really what are our driving habits. So that's your range anxiety question. Your next question was about charging stations. So part of the range anxiety is alleviated with the fact that charging infrastructure is being put in place. When you look at the analytics, when you look at the facts in the market, around 85% today, and probably that number will go down to 75%, but a majority of the charging is going to happen. The gas pumps of tomorrow are going to be within your own house. So, and overnight, because electricity, at least in Ontario and in Canada, electricity is cheapest at night. Ontario, we are lucky to have nuclear, abundance of electrons, base load, and at night electricity is much, much cheaper. So if 75% of the charging is happening here, the next place where charging will happen is at workplaces, where we spend about 8 hours of the day. So if we focus on these two, and the rest is really quick chargers en route. So you do need, yes, we do need an infrastructure of electric vehicle charging, but it's going to look very different from the current gasoline model that we have, gas pump model that we have in the market. Your third question was about GHG. Basically, I think you're asking cradle to grave, how clean are the cars? Well, it is a little bit garbage in, garbage out. So if your car is fed with clean electrons, then from cradle to grave, it's actually much, much cleaner than any other traditional car. But however, if your car is fed with electrons that came from fossil fuels, so which means even before the electrons were put into the car, you have already had a lot of fossil fuel issue in generating those electrons, then no doubt that the GHG savings from cradle to grave is going to be low. But having said that, it takes years for behavior to change. Remember, I talked about democratization. when this starts sticking with the customer, it needs to start sticking with the customer now. So as people start making a change in their behavior and start driving electric, the industry starts making a move from fossil fuel to clean fuel. And together, as we go on this journey, we will be able to clean up the GHG from cradle to grave.
Sure. So my next question for you, a very quick answer, because then we have to go to the next speaker. Can you tell us a bit more in brief about the electricity pricing pilot, which many expect will provide lower electricity rates for EV drivers in Ontario starting next year? I am sure other jurisdictions, including India, may want to learn more to provide similar rate relief to their population as well.
Absolutely. So the end of the day, what we tried to do was we figured out a zero-sum game. And within the context of Ontario, we have our peak is summer daytime peaking. At night, we have excess electrons that sometimes we have to pay to spill them over and send them across to our neighbor, to US or other jurisdictions. So instead of so we've got like a peaky daytime and then a trough at night. What is the best way to soak up those electrons at night? If we have electric vehicles, they can soak up the electrons when we don't need them and drive around during the day, and we don't need to get fossil fuel. So it was like a beautiful thought, and this led us to conduct a pilot on it in terms of, if we were to offer a super low rate at night, what would be the uptake? How many customers would change behavior? How much would the customer save? How much would the system benefit by shifting peak? And the results from it were tremendous. The government of Ontario has requested Ontario Energy Board, has given direction to Ontario Energy Board to look into this so that it can be offered to all of Ontarians starting April next year.
Sure. Thank you for that, Neetika ji. Wonderful insights actually in this sector. Okay, so let us move to our next speaker for today. We are running about 10 minutes over time. Mackenzie Velders, Tejas, if you want to do the introduction.
Yeah. If I can ask everyone to slowly start coming online, we'll take a quick screenshot. I will read Mackenzie's introduction, and then we will take a screenshot. So our next speaker is Mackenzie Velders, who is the public outreach lead of Solar Alberta. Mackenzie is, while working at Solar Alberta, she is completing her post-secondary studies in business administration. Mackenzie prides herself on her social and climate justice advocacy. A Fort McMurray resident, Mackenzie has spent years serving her community in various ways, including volunteering for and leading social justice clubs and initiatives, and volunteering in the not-for-profit sector. So after that great talk by Neetika ji and the picture in India presented by Amit, I think we are quite ready to listen to Mackenzie and hear about Solar Alberta. So if we can just, okay, Nagasar, you can stop screen sharing. Okay, if I can just get everyone to look into their cameras, and I will take a screenshot at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, everybody's eyes are open. Please go ahead. Mackenzie.
Thank you for the introduction and having me today. I'm just gonna start sharing my screen, hopefully, and then get started. There we go. Can we see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, and thank you for hosting me today. My name is Mackenzie Velders, and I'm the Public Outreach Lead at Solar Alberta. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge that I'm presenting to you today from Fort McMurray, Alberta, which is located on Treaty 8 territory and the homelands of the Métis. Treaty 8 territory is the traditional gathering place of the Cree and Dene, nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. Today, I will share a bit about Solar Alberta, give a brief overview of Solar Alberta, and then review some industry trends. Following the presentation, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. To begin, I am pleased to share that this is Solar Alberta's 31st year of operation. We are a not-for-profit society dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy and related technology. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory and map through our website, running a number of educational programs, such as professional development classes for the solar industry, a solar webinar series, and a new multilingual Solar 101 workshop series. We also host an incredible annual solar show for the public and professionals alike. Recordings of all of these can be found on our website, solaralberta.ca. Now that you know a little bit about Solar Alberta, I will share a bit of information about the solar system in Alberta and some of the solar industry trends here. With increased demand, technological advancements, and more manufacturing of solar in recent history, we've seen the cost of solar modules drop by 90% in 10 years. Solar and wind are now the cheapest forms of new power generation available globally without subsidy. Therefore, more and more people are investing in solar for economic reasons rather than purely environmental ones. Solar PV is what is taking off in Alberta, which is about harnessing the sun's light, and it works very well in northern climates because solar PV actually likes the cold. In Alberta, there are both small solar PV microgeneration arrays that are under 150 kilowatts and large microgeneration solar PV systems that are often called commercial systems, and you will see them on businesses or not-for-profits. Anything under 5 megawatts is considered microgeneration here. So with respect to this graph, you will see that microgeneration in Alberta, or systems smaller than 5 megawatts, grew at an incredible rate in the last 7 years. This graph shows that we had about 5 megawatts on the grid in 2015, and there is now over 118 megawatts of installed solar microgeneration capacity, and this number is growing daily. And while that microgeneration growth is impressive, the big story in Alberta these days is actually utility scale solar, which is a system that has the capacity to generate more than 5 megawatts of energy. These systems were producing 117 megawatts of solar in January 2020, are now producing 736 in Alberta today, and are planning to produce over 9,000 megawatts of solar in 2024. Add it all up, and we will have over 10,000 megawatts of solar in Alberta in 2024. There are even more projects being announced regularly because there's something of a gold rush on good solar land right now. The difference with these utility scale PV systems is that they are highly regulated and many land and other studies must be done before they can be developed. So while permitting for a microgeneration system might take anywhere from a few weeks to a couple months, these utility scale systems often take 2 to 3 or more years to develop. Another prime difference between these utility scale systems and the microgeneration systems is that they are generating power as a commodity rather than to offset their consumption. They're selling power either directly to the grid or in a power purchase agreement to a large company such as RBC or Labatt or Amazon. The number of projects that have been recently announced here is astounding, but it's important to remember that solar still makes up less than 5% of Alberta's electricity grid, and renewables in general still make up less than 20%. So we have a long way to go before our grid is actually net zero. Now, when you look at how solar is taking off in Alberta, you might be wondering why our province is leading this uptake, in particular within Canada. Some reasons include that we have incredible solar potential. This map here from the Government of Canada shows that Alberta and Saskatchewan are in deep orange or yellow, and that means we have incredible generating potential. We have a workforce that is keen and ready to transition, and we have a culture that values self-sufficiency. And because solar is very grassroots, it lends itself to that independent streak that we embody here. Our market is open for private investment, and we're the only province that has this ability, which makes it relatively easy for solar businesses to set up shop and expand here compared to other jurisdictions, and for power purchase agreements to be established. Lastly, goal setting is important to drive the expansion of solar. The federal government has committed to net zero electricity by 2035. Now that we've reviewed the overall picture of solar in Alberta, I'd like to hone in on more concrete recent industry trends. First off, we're getting a lot of questions and doing more and more education about solar-ready design. Solar-ready design can include very concrete things, such as ensuring roofs are oriented properly and that roof designs don't include unnecessary peaks. It means ensuring that the home's electrical wiring and box can accommodate not only solar, but also the adoption of solar-related technology such as EVs, air source heat pumps, electric appliances, and more. Solar-ready design also can mean integrating solar into roof gardens and making sure you're planting trees around the home in ways that will not obstruct the sun's rays at the optimal production time of year. We are also increasingly having conversations with city planners, bylaw officers, and others about how to develop communities with solar in mind. If these folks can get the street orientation and design done right, it can really facilitate the uptake of a significant amount of solar. Some municipalities like Saskatoon are in fact requiring that all new builds have solar on their roof. Second, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it is now possible to purchase building supplies such as roofing, siding, windows, railings, and awnings that have solar PV integrated directly into them. Building integrated solar PV is especially good for commercial builds or multifamily buildings where there are economies of scale. This can also be considered for more affluent individual homeowners who do not have a roof that is optimal for solar. When it comes to gaps in the Alberta solar market, there's certainly unmet demand for affordable building integrated solar PV products. Thirdly, we are seeing community generation starting to take root in Alberta. Community generation is where a group of people can come together and invest in a solar development that is not on their own property. This approach is beginning to take off in Alberta, and a number of cooperatives and Indigenous nations are leading the charge with various types of ownership structures. Above is the Métis Crossing Solar Farm. This project is a 4.86 megawatt community generation solar installation and is the collaboration among the MNA, the town of Smoky Lake, and Smoky Lake County. Community generation is still in its early stages in Alberta, but it will give apartment dwellers, renters, and others who do not have a solar appropriate roof an opportunity to participate in solar. If you're keen to learn more about community generation, you can find more community generation organizations through our Solar Alberta directory that I mentioned earlier. The fourth interesting industry trend that is getting a lot of attention in Alberta these days is agrivoltaics, or the practice of combining solar PV with food production. Solar can be integrated on all sorts of farms, including those producing honey, wine, and herbs, as well as those with livestock. In fact, solar PV is being used to protect sheep, cows, and even cars from hail and other increasingly hostile weather patterns here in Alberta. Not only can solar PV coexist with and protect the livestock and crop, the land under and around solar arrays often maintains its moisture better and can be used to create pollinator gardens or grow perennial grasses, which in turn can help stormwater filter slowly into the soil, which can reduce runoff and erosion. Their roots can also trap excess fertilizer from nearby farm fields before runoff enters streams and rivers. Agrivoltaics is highly recommended by all those worried about food security. Some municipalities are requiring this integration and establishing solar siting guidelines before allowing solar developments to take place on good farmland. All right, that's all I have in terms of presentation for today. I'd now like to open the floor to questions.
Vipul, you're on mute.
Hi. Hello, Mackenzie. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I will have to improvise a little bit. Our next speaker, Minister Ranj Pillai from Yukon, he has got another meeting in a few minutes. So I will go to him and then I'll come back to you for your questions. Is that okay?
I actually have to log off now, but.
Okay, so in that case, let me ask you one quick question. Alberta is primarily known for its oil and gas, as we all know, the fossil fuels that largely drive Alberta's economy. Transitioning the province to solar and other renewable sources of energy won't be easy or quick. how is the journey towards solar so far? Although you touched upon it a little bit in your presentation. So because your progress and your success can show a path to many others for a similar transition.
Sure. So I think that Alberta is keen and ready to transition. There are definitely lots of folks who are spearheading this transition, and I think it's just a matter of time.
That was quick. Okay, so let me then bring in the next question. China is a major source of manufacturing for solar panels. With the current supply chain and geopolitical issues, how reliable or sustainable is it to depend upon one source? And where do you see other options emerging in the future, domestically or internationally?
Sure. So I can't speak too much to the issue with the supply chain coming from China, but I can mention that lots of solar companies in Alberta are starting to set up their own manufacturing in the province to kind of curtail that supply chain issues that they've been experiencing during COVID.
Okay, thank you for it. Very quick, brief answers. So thank you for participating, for your presentation, and for your time. So let us move to our next speaker. Nagasrat, if you can pull up the slide for. Okay, so Mr. Ranj Pillai is the Minister for Economic Development, Government of Yukon. He was first elected to the Yukon Legislative Assembly in 2016 and was appointed as Deputy Premier, Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, Minister of Economic Development, and Minister responsible for the Yukon Development Corporation and the Yukon Energy Corporation. Since 2016, Yukon has been leading the country with the lowest unemployment rate, strong GDP growth, and impressive investments in building construction. Mr. Pillai was instrumental in the development and launch of a number of policies that will chart a path for Yukon's future, including Cultivating Our Future 2020 Yukon Agriculture Policy, Our Clean Future, a Yukon Strategy for Climate Change, Energy and a Green Economy, and Yukon Energy's 10-year Renewable Electricity Plan. Mr. Pillai is a trusted decision maker and a tireless community advocate who has contributed to numerous Yukon businesses, governments, schools, and not-for-profits. He also co-chaired the 2020 Energy and Mines Ministers Conference alongside Mrs. Seamus O'Regan, Canada's Minister of Natural Resources. He was a Whitehorse City Councillor from 2009 to 2012. During his tenure, he spearheaded the first anti-racism and discrimination bylaw north of 60. He was previously Executive Director of the Champagne and Reshihick First Nations Government, has held senior roles with Northern Vision Development and Yukon University, and is a former member of the Governor General's Leadership Conference and Banff Forum. He has also held previous roles with numerous First Nation development corporations and junior mining companies. Mr. Pillai and his wife, Delilah, have 2 sons. So over to you, sir. And Nagasrat, I believe we'll have to run the slides for him. So if you can bring up the presentation and we can share the screen, I guess.
Vipul, can we take a quick screenshot of everyone?
Sure.
We have a few more speakers. So Rahul, Rajat, if you can come on. Okay, give me a second. Okay, at the count of 3, look into your cameras and smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejas.
Great.
Okay, so over to you, Mr. Pillai.
Good morning. Great. Good morning, everyone. Good morning from the Yukon. It's early in the morning here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I know we're a little bit compressed on time, so I'm going to move through this presentation fairly quickly. I think for anybody who's listening today, the key takeaway that I want to share with you, and I know this is kind of, I'm going to put my preamble before I really get into the presentation, is it's really about the potential for partnerships with global companies enhancing our supply chain, looking for partnership, bulking up our technical abilities to meet the goals that we have. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I guess what I'll just put out to folks today is I might move off the presentation fairly quickly into another meeting, but please reach out to me and to my Department of Economic Development, and then we can make sure that we help you meet with the right partners if you have interest. So with that, again, my name is Ranj. I'm the Yukon's Minister for Economic Development. Again, happy to be joining you today virtually from the traditional territories of the Kwantlen First Nation and the Tanquatchin Council. Again, I hope everybody's enjoying the roundtable and benefiting from the opportunity of our two countries to share renewable energy initiatives and methods to combat climate change. And I want to thank Mr. Johnny for inviting me again to speak today. Thank you very much. So we'll move to the next slide. As you all know, climate change is a global challenge that we all must face together. I'm grateful that we've been working very closely with India and Canada to share in these discussions to discover new solutions and partnership. Here in the Yukon, we have committed to several emissions and energy targets outlined in Our Clean Future, a Yukon strategy for climate change, energy, and a green economy. And the government of Yukon has outlined a series of specific goals that will allow us to transition to new forms of energy while creating good jobs for Yukoners. Next slide. Our vision is for the various governments throughout our territory to come together as leaders to address climate change by building thriving, resilient communities powered by renewable energy and supported by sustainable green economy that protects and restores our natural environment. Challenging times can create new opportunities, and that is exactly what we plan to accomplish as we implement the strategy. In the fall of 2019, the government of Yukon declared a climate change emergency. As many folks would know, we are on essentially ground zero of climate change, being this far north. Because of this, we have set a target that by the year 2030, 97% of Yukon's energy needs will be met by renewable energy sources. Next slide, please. As our population continues to grow, the Yukon's electricity demand is projected to increase by 40% over the next 10 years. I'll share an interesting statistic with listeners today. Over the last 5 years, our population growth has been 12.1%. So if you look at Canada's population growth was double the average of the G7. We were quadruple the average of the G7. This is the fastest growing, essentially, province or territory or state in the G7. The Yukon faces a unique and specific challenge when it comes to energy, and that is that many rural communities, which are not connected to our main energy grid, it's very rural and it's very large. Many of these areas rely on diesel generators, particularly during the winter. So by working with Yukon First Nations and ACO Electric, which is a private sector company that is a partner of ours, we aim to reduce the use of diesel generated electricity in off-grid communities by 30%. This means that for renewable energy projects to make a meaningful impact, they must be led from a grassroots level and be supported by our communities. Next slide, please. We invest in local energy, renewable energy projects. We encourage the purchase of green technologies to help Yukon businesses and workers develop new skills to support our growing clean energy industry. To encourage these actions, we launched something called the Innovative Renewable Energy Initiative. So what we had to do first about 5 years ago was to put the proper regulation in place so that these communities could sell their energy into microgrids or the main grid. And then we are now enhancing it by making sure that we have the ability to allocate capital into these projects at the grassroots level. So the initiatives funds Yukon First Nations, municipalities, and community-based organizations to identify and develop projects that generate electricity and heat in our homes and businesses from renewable sources. So since the program's inception in 2018, over $5 million has been invested in energy projects. So some of the examples, if individuals go and look at sort of a map of the Yukon, you'll see, just under $500,000 to Kwani First Nation, which is on Klawani Lake in sort of a rural Western Yukon. North of that, are the most Western community in all of Canada. People think it might be British Columbia, but actually it's the Yukon. We worked with White River First Nation on implementing another solar project there, 1.2 megawatt solar project. Again, just within the area of Carcross, just south of Whitehorse, our capital, another solar project with Carcross Tagish First Nation. Again, just south of Whitehorse, another project with Kwanli Dun First Nation. And one of our most southern communities in Watson Lake with just under $300,000 with Liard First Nation to construct a 3 megawatt solar energy project. So these initiatives guarantee that people in rural areas who understand the unique needs of their neighbors can dictate how energy is produced in their area and can be leaders in the fight against climate change. And for First Nations governments, this also really works into self-determination and sustainability. It's a great opportunity from a financial perspective. And of course, it's just good for the environment. Next slide, please. So the Innovative Renewable Energy Initiative works in tandem with the Independent Power Production Policy, which I just had mentioned. So the policy provides for the purchase of electricity from independent power producers, including Yukon First Nations and communities who want to generate electricity from eligible sources and sell it to a publicly owned utility that is either Yukon Energy Corporation or ATCO Electric, which is based out of Alberta. The Innovative Renewable Energy Initiative funds prospective independent power producers, typically at the feasibility and design stages of their projects. And to date, 4 independent power producers have achieved commercial operation date status with their utilities. The Old Crow Solar Project was highly publicized on the national news on CBC. There was a special just over the last number of months where they flew into Old Crow. It's our northernmost community. It's a flying community, and talked about the importance of that solar project. Again, we have another solar project in Whitehorse, another one in north of Whitehorse, and then again in Dawson City. Next slide, please. Many community-led renewable energy projects, and not just in the Yukon, but also across the Northwest Territories and Yukon, rely on Solvest for technical contracting expertise. Solvest is a Whitehorse-based solar company that specializes in remote energy generation. The company has grown from being focused solely on residential solar installations to providing energy solutions at a commercial scale. So across Canada, the company has installed over 500 PV systems that account for 10 megawatts of installed capacity. Solvest itself is also an independent power producer, and in fact was the proponent behind the mentioned North Klondike Highway solar project, what I mentioned, which is just north of Whitehorse. Next slide, please. The government of Yukon, again, is proud to provide support for our First Nations and community partners to develop renewable energy projects that help reduce the Yukon's reliance on fossil fuels. The government of Yukon's annual contribution to our Innovative Renewable Energy Initiative is about $2.5 million. Now, I want to just ensure that folks know we're right now, our capital in commitment to renewable energies is about $500 million in the Yukon. So this is really about touching on these smaller solar projects that I think might interest some of your listeners today. But again, very substantial commitment as we move over the next number of years. This particular program that I'm touching on, interest in this program has grown each year since its inception in 2018, and is very exciting to see so many Yukoners, again, passionate about renewable energy. Last year, we supported a number of exciting projects across the territory through this program. And this also includes biomass projects, wind turbines, hydro generation, and again, many solar projects. For those of you unfamiliar with the Yukon, during the summer months, we benefit from sunlight nearly around the clock, almost 24 hours of sunlight through our summer. And of course, you've heard probably the moniker, the land of the midnight sun. It is very literally, and it opens up significant opportunity for solar projects. Next slide, please. I just want to turn to another significant project. So hydro has also been a big focus for us. We are currently exploring options with partners in British Columbia on the Atlan Hydro expansion plan. This project alone will reduce the Yukon's diesel consumption by 9 million liters annually and reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the territory by about 28,000 tons tones per year. The project is expected to add about 8 megawatts of dependable capacity to Yukon's grid. And this will increase the size of our electrical system by approximately 8%. It's also expected to generate about 31 gigawatt hours of hydroelectricity each winter, and roughly the same amount of electricity used by about 2,500 Yukon homes annually. Next slide, please. In addition to working partners, our government offers micro grants to individuals. So this picture behind this is in a very rural area, beautiful. It's on one of the biggest lakes in Canada on Kewaunee Lake. And it's it's a small office that's used by the First Nation, Kewaunee First Nation. So the Yukon's microgeneration policy allows individuals to implement small scale generation projects from renewable sources and sell unused electricity to the grid. The program has been very popular and led to the development of locally sourced renewable energy and created new business opportunities, especially in our solar energy generation systems. On December 31st, 2021, there were over 510 microgenerators connected to Yukon's utility grid, generating enough energy supply for about 1.2% of the Yukon's 5-year average annual electricity generation. So our statistical information shows we have the highest per capita, again, microgeneration in the country. We're empowering individuals, governments, and organizations to take action against climate change. And again, we are glad to be continuing to do this very important work. Last slide. So in closing, again, I'm very glad to have had this opportunity to share with all of you on how our territory is working to mitigate climate change. Again, we're a relatively small part of Canada when it comes to population in the world, but it is important that we all, of course, do our part. The India-Canada relationship is strong, and we still have so much to share between our lands and many opportunities to explore, and even in ever deepening connections to areas like education, immigration, and business. I know this morning you had the High Commissioner on. He has just spent some time with me just a few weeks ago. We had an opportunity to really look at all of the opportunities that are available here, from business investment to energy to critical minerals, just so many things. And again, for folks that don't know a lot about the Yukon, out of all countries of origin, last year, the biggest country of origin was India through our immigration programs into the Yukon. And at our university, which is the first university in the north, the largest portion of international students are from India. So again, this is one of our greatest challenges of our times when we deal with climate change, and happy to build partnerships with companies that may be listening today, with our local companies and our government. I can probably take a few questions, Mr. Johnny, if you'd like. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. I will ask you a couple of questions briefly. I know you have another meeting with an ambassador, but the High Commissioner is very much here listening to you. So,
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, Bisaria, if you want to say something to Mr. Pillai. You're on mute, sir.
Just to quickly greet Minister Pillai and thank him for my excellent immersion into the Yukon a couple of weeks ago. Great learning, and everything that he says is absolutely bang on, particularly in terms of the opportunities that we have. And, you know, when I went in, I didn't realize that we would have so many strong opportunities for collaboration with India, with a Yukon with a population of 40,000, but there are, and there is much to learn from what Yukon is doing. The numbers are staggering: 97% of energy from non-fossil sources by 2030. Very, very impressive, and great to have you across, Minister.
Good to see you. Great to see you.
Yes. So, all right. So I will ask you two quick questions. The first one is a little bit long one. About 1/3 of Yukon's total energy supply comes from renewable energy sources as of today. You have handled the energy portfolio for Yukon earlier. In September 2020, Yukon released a strategy paper titled Our Clean Future, a Yukon strategy for climate change, energy, and a green economy to address the impact of climate change and provide reliable, affordable, and renewable energy to Yukon. While the current energy minister, Mr. John Straker, is not with us today, can you tell us about the progress that Yukon has since made on that, as well as the business and investment opportunities in this sector as Yukon's economic development minister?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that the key items I would focus on is, one, we've continued to work with a number of First Nation governments. Almost every community in the Yukon, and whether it doesn't matter how rural it is, we're certainly investing and we're in partnership with these Indigenous governments to ensure that we have new projects. In some cases, again, it's wind, but we've had everything brought to us from hydrogen production right through to wind or biomass. We also have modern treaties with Indigenous governments, and they're really a framework for investment. It's very key to us. So it's those treaties are actually anchored in the Constitution of the country of Canada. But what it does, it gives us a blueprint to be able to work through social license, but also to provide opportunities to these governments. So again, there's a lot of different projects that are underway right now. We touched on this hydro project in BC. Geographically, if you take a look, where you actually, that community in British Columbia, you have to go through the Yukon to get to that community. It's it's an interesting location. So we're working on that particular project. And then we have another project that is being moved ahead very quickly, which is a pump storage project, but that's about $500 million. It'll be one of the largest pump storage projects in Canada, if not the largest. So again, those are key items that we're moving ahead on. Again, I would say, we're about to launch the purchase of the largest grid scale battery in the country. We have now gone through a procurement process that is going to be very substantial for us, because as your previous speakers have talked about, it's really being able to maximize the use of renewables. And for us, of course, having that, that level of storage is going to be very key for us to go through. So I think the fact that that's been acquired, or that the procurement process has been completed, and now we're looking at installation, is also going to be key for us. Mr. Johnny, I could go on. I think, what's best for the listeners today is that individuals reach out to me. Solvist, which I brought that company's name up because they're now sort of the expert across the north of Canada. Their team is growing immensely. They're bringing in teams of technical experts, engineers from across the country now to make the Yukon their home. But one of the things we've wanted to do is to spend time in India to talk about supply chain. And it's just because the last 2 years and what's happened with COVID that we've had to put that off. But the High Commissioner and I have spoke at length about this. We will be making a trip within 2022 to India. And part of that will be to identify potential partners, and again, to look at how we can improve our supply chain. So again, please reach out to me, and I would love to set up meetings with our companies, but also just to get to know folks and understand the opportunities.
So my next question is exactly on that. Yukon's ties with India are getting stronger, including more and more students coming to Yukon University as well. So where do you see possibilities and opportunities for a larger Yukon-India cooperation, including in this particular sector of renewable energy?
Yeah, I mean, we of course, the High Commissioner and I had spoke at great length about a number of opportunities. We're going to have university students who come here. Even in my cabinet offices now, we have students that have made that are now they're employed here with us, and they're making Yukon their home. It's not what we saw in the past was individuals from India coming to the Yukon, spending some time, maybe going through an immigration process and then moving to larger centers. But now they're making this their home. And one of the fun things that the High Commissioner and I had the opportunity to do was to go and visit the very rural areas, and we'd go into a business, and of course, somebody that has moved from India is there, and you're in the middle of the north of Canada. So as always, there is a long history, decades and decades, of very strong entrepreneurial Indians that are here that have built many businesses. And so that diaspora is already here, and there's a foundation. But I think in the future, what we'll talk about is energy. We're going to talk about knowledge-based economy. Not to go too far off the topic of today, but we're going to be talking tech. We're going to be talking about having startups have the opportunity to come to our innovation center that we built a couple of years ago. Again, my next call in 8 minutes is going to be about critical minerals. The world is looking for critical minerals. We have critical minerals. And again, that's going to be a key partnership. And of course, we actually have a coastline on the Arctic. And so we're also going to be very focused on Arctic research and how the north of Canada opens up for shipping routes. And that's all going to be key. Again, we're going to be looking to build partnerships as well with airlines from India. So, whether it's tourism, energy, business, investment, I think there's just a tremendous amount that we can talk about in the future.
Thank you for the presentation and for strengthening Yukon's relationships and ties with India. And looking forward to your visit to India this year, and also for us working with you closer. As Yukon is now our presenting sponsor as well, and we'll be happy to promote Yukon within Canada as well as to India, and vice versa. So thank you for that, Mr. Pillai. I know you have your next meeting waiting for you, so we'll let you go, and so we'll move to our next speaker, Justin Wahid Rangooni, who has been waiting patiently. Sorry for going about 15 minutes over time. Justin, so Nagasarat Pannurangi, our great support. He works with Seneca College, and a very, very bright young man. He will make the introduction. Nagasarat, please go ahead.
Thank you, Vipulbhai, and it is my pleasure to introduce Justin Wahid Rangooni, the Executive Director, Energy Storage Canada. Justin is a lawyer with over a decade worth of experience in energy sector, starting as a senior policy advisor for Ontario Ministry of Energy, and then as Ontario policy lead for the Canadian Wind Energy Association. Most recently as a vice president, policy and government affairs at Electricity Distributors Association. Justin holds an honors BA Economics and Political Science from University of Toronto, as well as a law degree from University of Western. He is also currently sitting on the board of currently sitting on the board of the York Children's Aid Society. With great pleasure, I welcome Justin for his remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the introductions. I know we're short on time, Mr. Johnny, but I'll do it very quick. So I'm the Executive Director of Energy Storage Canada. We are the National Trade Association of the energy storage sector. We have over 100 members, and we look to advance the energy storage sector across Canada. We look at things as utility scale, all the way down to behind the meter and residential energy storage. We're technology agnostic, so we represent all the energy storage technology, be it batteries, compressed air, pump storage, thermal storage, flywheels, you name it. And really for this decade, we're looking at a lot of potential for energy storage in Canada as the Minister previously spoke about, with the amount of renewables that are coming online and the amount of the Canadian jurisdictions looking to achieve net zero. It cannot be done without energy storage. And so we are looking to make sure that the rules are in place to enable energy storage, that the market opportunities will exist, and to really create energy storage on a level playing field with other forms of generation. So, look forward to some questions, Mr. Johnny, but if you want to find out more about energy storage, you can look at our website at energystoragecanada.org.
Wonderful. Okay, so that was pretty short and quick. Okay, so at least it will give us a chance to go through a couple of questions for you. I will ask you maybe 2 or 3 questions, rather. The first one is, how much does a typical energy storage project cost? And is there a PPP model in this sector? Or is it mostly funded privately or by various levels of government? And do you see a possibility for a larger government-to-government partnership in this internationally?
So I would say in terms of the cost, it really depends on the size and the scale of the energy storage. So you can imagine like a residential battery being in the thousands of dollars versus to a giant utility scale of its pump storage or compressed air, or even a very large battery, you're looking at tens of millions and upwards. It's similar to any form of scale of generation. But the good thing is with that cost, as technologies are advancing, as other markets are embracing energy storage. In fact, in the United States, you have 11 states that have US targets, and you can see that over the past decade, energy storage costs have decreased dramatically. And you're looking again at that kind of pattern to continue for the rest of the decade. So really the cost will depend on the scale and the type of technology. And in terms of how energy storage projects are built, it all depends on the jurisdiction as well. In Ontario, and there's probably more of an RFP procurement process, which would look for private entities to produce these, to build these projects. In other Canadian jurisdictions, you're looking at maybe more of a government or the provincial utility partnering or doing it themselves. So it really depends on the energy jurisdiction and how it is structured. And then in terms of government to government, I think where the role of governments to play here is really to push forward a net zero and clean electricity standards, to send a signal to jurisdictions on what type of generation that they would like to see in their country. And then really to learn from some R&D, especially with long duration storage, which we talk about like 6 hours, 8 hours, days of storage, would require a good amount of R&D. So that's something where governments could play a role in helping to accelerate those technologies.
Okay. My next question to you is, how is energy stored for a layman, who is not familiar with how the sector works? More in general terms, how is energy stored and how does it help in reducing greenhouse gas emissions as well as giving savings for the end user?
Great. No, it's a good question. And as its name, it really does store the electricity that is generated. And really what's key with energy storage is it can store electricity on different parts of the energy system. So you can store electricity right when it comes out of the power plant. So you could have an energy storage facility that does it there. You could have it off the large transmission wires, which are delivering that electricity. You could have it on the distribution side when it's being stepped down to be delivered to homes. You could have it at energy storage systems at the large commercial and industrial plants that are using a lot of electricity. They could have energy storage systems there. It could be down all the way down to the residential. It could be your electric vehicle as a battery. And really what that's doing, it's taking that electricity from the grid and holding it for when it's needed. And in terms of combating and reducing GHG emissions, it is, as the minister said, it's optimizing those renewable clean assets, because maybe the wind doesn't blow when the supply needs it, or the sun's not shining when it's required. So instead of letting it curtail or not using it or spilling water or sending it to an export at a loss, Canada can now hold that electricity for when it's required. And so that would negate the need to require so much on fossil fuel burning generation. And that's really the key point of how energy storage can help achieve net zero and reduce GHG emissions.
Okay. Tejas, you have a question for Justin?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Justin. That was a great presentation, and thanks for the question and answer as well. I wanted to sort of touch back on a point that people had asked, in terms of the materials that are used in these energy storage technologies. There is typically a concern about the impact of mining, right, on lithium mining in particular, and the supply chains that brings that material to us. So is that a matter of concern for energy storage or energy storage technologies? And if yes, like what steps, if any, are being taken to mitigate the impact, lessen them, or even just lessen the dependence on those types of materials?
Right. No, it's a very good question. And as of right now, if you're building a battery storage project, it's primarily going to be lithium. But you're seeing a lot of technological advancements with different battery chemistries, zinc, cobalt. So that's one way where you can start to address some of the supply issues or other issues with the mining by looking at other more other forms of minerals, critical minerals that could contribute to energy storage. And then again, there's other energy storage technologies as well: compressed air, molten salt, pump storage, flywheels, mechanical. So there are other forms of energy storage that also can be looked at if lithium becomes an issue. But in the meantime, like, it continues down this road, but technological advancements and hopefully supply chain improvements will help improve the situation. And I would just add too, one of the better things with energy storage is its recycling ability. So what some are saying with electric vehicles that are using lithium and other minerals is, as they become to their shorter lifespan, they could actually be converted for use in larger utility scale energy storage. So energy storage providing grid services can provide a recycling for electric vehicle batteries.
Okay, very quickly, just last 30 seconds from you. I know you have to leave in a minute, but although Energy Storage Canada is a Canadian organization, primarily made up of all Canadian companies operating within Canada, but are you open as an organization to explore the possibilities with India? Because the energy needs, the storage requirements, all those things in India are going to be huge in the days to come. And it will be fantastic, to have a working relationship between Energy Storage Canada and India.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. And one of the things that I think our members would really enjoy is those opportunities. In fact, a lot of our members who are based in Canada in the last few years have been doing a lot of work internationally in the US, Australia, Taiwan, Thailand, because the markets were there. So they were doing a lot of work already. So they have a lot of international experience. So if you're interested in meeting some of our members, please reach out to us, energystoragecanada.org. You can find some information there. I'm sure my contact information can be provided by Mr. Johnny as well. And yeah, I think our members would really enjoy speaking with you if there's an interest and providing some Canadian expertise to help and partner with India.
Fantastic. That is great news. So you will hear from me again in the next few days and weeks. So thank you, Justin. And
thank you very much.
I know you have your next session already there.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
So that brings us to our last speaker of the day, last but definitely not the least, Rahul Bhutiani from Adani Solar. Rahul Bhutiani is an experienced marketer and business leader with over 27 years of varied experience in diversified businesses. He holds a master's in business administration and an engineering degree. His strong background as a marketing strategy professional has been instrumental in driving business growth for various companies at different stages of evolution. He is known for his significant contributions in impacting businesses through interventions in strategy, business dimensioning, channel dimensioning, sales and marketing operations. He has experience in financial services, media, telecom, and solar. At Adani Solar, Rahul is leading the sales and marketing efforts as Adani Solar embarks on a path of significant growth over the next few years, increasing its solar cell and module installed capacity multi-fold, and also establishing its presence in the entire value chain of the solar manufacturing process. Adani Solar is today the most trusted solar brand in India and is slowly but steadily establishing a global footprint through sales in North America and Europe. Prior to joining the Adani Group, Rahul has held executive positions in various companies like Reliance, Tata, Franklin Templeton, Dell, and Times of India. What an impressive resume there, Rahul. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Vipul, and all the other panelists, and His Excellency, the High Commissioner of India. Thank you for having me here. I've heard all through the evening so many, presentations which are talking about how the government and the policy making is trying to influence adoption of renewables across Canada, and how it's all going to materialize in taking Canada to its goals getting to net zero by 2050. I think that is the target. India is also looking at a net zero target, which is in 2070. So with all of this in place, and solar apparently will continue to be the largest contributor in this journey for most countries across the world as they latch onto the renewables bandwagon and want to ensure that they reach their net zero emission targets in the coming years. So so we are uniquely positioned here in helping all governments, all companies, all states in Canada. We are one of the largest manufacturers of solar modules, PV modules in India, and can be a solid partner for all Canadian governments, state governments, in how you go about achieving your numbers, especially when I heard some of the comments with respect to how do you ensure that you have more control on the supply chain, or you have more surety about the supply chain, especially after what we witnessed in the last 2-3 years during COVID and being held at ransom at times with respect to the supply chain. So India can provide, an Adani Solar in India can provide you the absolute alternative fallback for your supply chain requirements.
I was inquiring about the spring classes that are coming up. I wanted a spot for Saturday.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, someone's mic is on, so
I think gone off. Yeah, that's gone off. So now we can continue. Okay. I'm saying a perfect fallback option for creating the alternative to the supply chain challenges that we've all faced in the past. Adani Solar could be the right fallback. So I'm going to give you a very quick overview of what Adani Solar is in India and how we are evolving this entire ecosystem of solar manufacturing in India, which can cater to the needs of the domestic market in India. Obviously, like Amit talked about, and his High Commission also talked about the way India is moving on its renewable energy path, and therefore the intense need for solar manufacturing and solar capacities in India. But at the same time, I think there is opportunity for the way solar module manufacturing is taking shape in India and how it's estimated to grow with all these PLI schemes that have been announced. There would be opportunity for India to emerge as one of the larger exporters of solar PV modules to the world at large, and provide an alternative in the supply chain conundrum. And ensure that we all have a kind of a safety net when dealing with the supply chain issues. So without further time, and so that I don't hold you back from your other tasks for the day, I will just share my screen now and try to share with you the presentation so that we can all yeah, let me see. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
great. So, our punchline is gets sun plugged, essentially, on the perspective that the sun is where we are all looking at getting our maximum renewable energy from. What we're doing at Adani Group, let me just give you a little background about the Adani Group before I get into the solar part of the Adani Group. So we are basically founded in 1988. We're leading business conglomerate of India and a global integrated infrastructure play with business interests in various sectors. One second, just over there. Yeah, okay. We have about 7 publicly traded companies with a combined market cap of over $100 billion. And our industry verticals that we're focused on are resources, logistics, energy, and agro. We have global footprints across Australia, Bangladesh, China, Dubai, Indonesia, Myanmar, Singapore, and the United States. This is primarily from the point of view of our resources business and the logistics business. So whether it's mining interests or it's port interests, that we have presence across so many countries that you see here. A quick look at the portfolio of businesses. So we have, transport and logistics portfolio and an energy and utility portfolio mainly. And then we have you have an incubator kind of a company, which is called Adani Enterprises, which houses a lot of the new businesses that we're getting into. So whether it is the current business that I'm representing, Adani solar manufacturing, or it is, the airports business that we've just acquired, or our Wilmar business, which is the oil manufacturing or the agro business, and we're setting up a data business, etc. And on the energy and utility portfolio, we have a very large portfolio, a very large organization by the name of Adani Green, which is a renewables energy portfolio with both solar and wind. And we're also setting up, our foray into green hydrogen in a large way. We already have I have a thermal power plant under Adani Power Limited and transmission under Adani Transmission. And of course, in transport and logistics, we have our very large play in the ports business, where we have significant ports across India and the international scenario. In terms of the renewable vision, we've already talked, so I won't talk too much about this, but India is looking at about 500 gigawatts by 2030, and 50% of the energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. We have, out of the 500 gigawatt capacity renewable target by 2030, solar will have a share of about 60%, which will be about 280 to 300 megawatts. Gigawatts of capacity by 2030 would be from solar. And at the current pace, we need to install about 25 to 30 gigawatts of solar capacity every year, which is a huge task. But I think the policy framework and the domestic manufacturing and the domestic environment is now all conducive and all geared towards the single goal. So we should see very close to these numbers by the end of 2030 is what we believe. And in tune with this big vision is the vision of our chairman. For want of time, I'm not playing his address here. There is a video embedded here. I could play his video, but it's available on YouTube. This is the address that he made at the India Global Forum, London in 2021, where he announced that Adani Group would be investing about 50 to 70 billion dollars across the energy chain, including renewables, manufacturing, and including backward integration, and looking at green hydrogen, maybe even some storage project, etc. So that's the focus that the group has, which is in tune with the larger vision of India and the world in terms of getting, becoming, let's say, green energy being the way we move forward. What we are, of course, we are largely, as Adani Solar, we're largely committed to the solar energy and making it affordable and accessible to all. We are the solar PV manufacturing arm of Adani Group. Currently, we have the largest vertically integrated solar manufacturing setup, offering latest technology products across the spectrum. We offer modules. We offer monopole modules and bifacial modules with superior efficiency, high performance, and reliability. Currently, we have a capacity of over 3.5 gigawatts at Mundra, which is part of Gujarat, the western coast of India. And this capacity, we are aiming to grow to 10 gigawatts in the coming years. That should give us a very large play within India and ability to meet some of the requirements across the globe. We continue to hold a dominant share in the Indian market. There are specific, schemes promoted by the government of India to ensure that there is distributed solar installation also, besides the concentrated or the utility scale solar installations that are happening. And rooftop is one of those schemes, and Kusum is aimed at farmers and making them grid independent, giving them the energy independence that they need in terms of their water requirements or their pumping requirements. And that's That's really kind of what the government of India is enabling, and Adani Solar has ensured that we contribute wholeheartedly to this initiative by the government of India, and we continue to provide the required modules in this segment and hold dominant share in our sales. We are also one of the larger exporters of solar modules from India. These were some small videos that we have on the facility that we have at Mundra, the solar module facility that we have at Mundra. It may be interesting to just quickly play. These are very short videos, so at least a couple of them, if I can play them for you.
Mundra Solar Technopark Limited, or MSTPL, is a special purpose vehicle formed to develop solar manufacturing ecosystem at Mundra SEZ. The Electronics Manufacturing Cluster, or EMC, is an initiative to develop infrastructure in the electronic systems design and manufacturing.
Yeah, so this is just to give you a flavor of the kind of setup we've created, and there
I think his connection dropped, so maybe you log back in.
Yeah, let's just wait for a few minutes. We'll see.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So in the meantime, let us pull up the slide for our partners and sponsors. We can recognize them in the meantime. Okay, so while we are waiting for Rahul to come back, let us recognize our partners for IMEC. We have two presenting sponsors for 2022, Tangentia and Yukon. And we are thankful to our annual partners, Simply Financial, Efficiency Canada, Home Hotel and Resort Limited, One Place, Pavi Bining, Natu Oil Services, Akal Insurance Brokers, ICICI Bank Canada, SBI Canada Bank, Skylink Capital Corp, and Seneca College for supporting this platform. So as I said earlier, this is our fifth conference in the Make in India series. After doing one on travel, tourism, hospitality, then IT and manufacturing, the third was on infrastructure, and the fourth was on healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Today's event is number 5, and then we will have number 6, Canada-India Bilateral Conference, most probably in the month of June. So you can see all our past and current events, conferences, and roundtables, and more details on our website, imec.biz, as well as we post all these activities and all these live videos, edited videos after the event on all our social media platforms, including on the IMEC LinkedIn page, IMEC Facebook page, and IMEC Twitter account, as well as on Instagram and Facebook page. So you can access all these events at your leisure and watch it whenever you like. Just sharing our previous conference, healthcare conference, I just noticed this morning. The YouTube channel, IMEC YouTube channel, we have got over 11,000 views. I think reaching close to 12,000 views for the healthcare conference. So it's been, in terms of the views, it has been going up very steadily, and hopefully over the next few conferences, we are hoping to touch at least 25,000 views as well. So since we are still waiting for Rahul, Amit, are you still there?
Yes, Vipul, I'm there.
Okay, so maybe we can use this time, to chat just a bit more. In terms of, the hand-holding and everything that you mentioned that you can provide for companies abroad, are you seeing much participation or activity from Canada into India in this particular sector, or Are you making your pitches to them, or where is the bilateral status today?
I mean, most of the hand-holding that we are doing is for the financial institutional investors, I mean, from Canada. The major players being the Canada Pension Board, the Brookfields, and there are Fairfax. So there, most of our work is going into channelizing their funds in Indian infrastructure sector.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the financial sides. There are few companies, I mean, not many big players we are facilitating right now, but we look forward to the Canadian players who would want to enter into Indian renewable energy sector. But on top of mind, I'm not getting any names as of now. But of course, I mean, most of the big funds are looking at India into the Indian renewable energy sector. So that's where, I mean, most of our hand holding is being done.
Okay. So it's on the investment side you mentioned, right? Is there anything
Yes.
On the technology transfer or knowledge sharing or anything like that?
I mean, I'm not able to get any names on top of my mind as of now. I mean, if my colleague Rajat is there, he can help. I mean, if he knows any one of few companies if are there, but I'll share that list with you, in over our communication if there are companies in that sector.
Okay. And are there any particular states, where you see more interest in India, like in let's say Gujarat or in Madhya Pradesh, or is there any particular area, western part of India, southern part of India, northern part of India, that is seeing more interest?
I mean, when you talk about the renewable energy sector, I mean, most of the investments are going to, let's say, India is a tropical country, into the sunny states, which could be the northern part of India. And when we talk about the wind, we're looking at the western coast of India. So when you combine both these, I mean, then you're looking into investments which are mostly flowing into Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and to some extent, I would say Karnataka. I mean, these are the 3-4 top states where we are seeing a lot of action happening. Especially for the renewable energy sector, it's mostly Gujarat where we are seeing a lot of players coming and setting up their manufacturing units. Gujarat for solar and Tamil Nadu for wind.
Okay, yeah, that's what I meant, where you have more sun available throughout the year.
Cluster, yeah, there's some kind of a cluster happening. I mean, for solar, it is, let's say, Gujarat, and for wind, it is more likely Tamil Nadu.
Okay. Sure. Tejas, do you have any question for Amit or for Rajat, Invest India in particular?
I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So I just got a message from Rahul that he is not able to log back in. I don't know why. So maybe he'll give it a minute more. So Adani, as everybody knows, I mean, it's a large company now, and will be a key player for manufacturing and exporting of solar panels abroad, right? So while we talk about bringing the technology and investment to India, I think it is also equally important to make in India and then send it outside. As Prime Minister Modi says, make in India, make for the world, right? So that's what I think is a key as part of Make in India. It's not just for India's consumption, it is for the consumption of the entire world, right? So in terms of
so the PL, when you talk about the PLI scheme, the production linked incentive scheme, a major plank of PLI is on the export side I mean, export, let's say, capacity of India. I mean, that's where, a major focus of PLI is that, if we can make in India and export to globally, and that is where, the solar PV cells and modules, and for other sectors also, we're looking at to make India an export hub. But of course, I mean, let's see how it shapes up. I mean, the coming times, because there's a lot of technological challenge and the technology is changing in renewable energy sector. So let's see how it goes. But a major focus is on the export side also.
Absolutely. Okay. So I guess, Tejas, you want to say something?
No, I just wanted, I'm okay. I'm fine.
All right, sure. So I think maybe we have just lost Rahul. I don't know, some connection issues on his side. So in any way, as always, this was another fascinating exchange of ideas, knowledge and expertise on another important sector for both Canada and India. I thank all the distinguished speakers today for sharing their knowledge and wisdom with us. We will now reach out to them soon for an in-person roundtable later next month to take these discussions to a meaningful and productive conclusion. So once again, a special thank you to all our IMEC sponsors. I just read out their names a couple of minutes ago. The conference is now formally closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.